What's going on, Bucs fans, and welcome to the Buccaneers post-game discussion for Week 3 against Minnesota here on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel. I am your host today, Redicus, and I'm going to be rolling by myself. Evan was feeling a little bit under the weather. Let's hope he gets feeling better in just a few days so we can record a brand new episode. But we are here today to talk about the massacre in Minnesota is what we'll call it. There's really no tiptoeing around it. This was a loss for the Bucs this week. Very sad loss for the Bucs this week. Something that hopefully shows us what we can be going up against for the rest of the season. Something that establishes the status of the teams that we have yet to play, like the New England Patriots, as well as a couple of other great teams on the schedule this year. The Packers in December is going to be a very tough game because nobody beats the Packers in Lambeau in December. But let's see if the Bucs can pull it out. We are talking Minnesota game today, and let me just pull up some stats. We did have to restart the stream. I apologize. There was a lot of miscommunication, bad timing on my end. And so I had to stop in the middle of the stream last time to get something going. But if you guys are coming back into the stream, I appreciate it very, very much. It means the world to us as long as you are supporting the channel. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you thumbs up on the live stream and let me know that you're in the live chat. And let's talk about some Bucs. 34-17 is your final out of Minnesota. And just a bad day for the Bucs all around. A lot of people said same old Bucs, and it could be looked at like that. But I think this is another level. This is an evolution of bad days for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It kind of before, 5+ years ago, a bad day for the Bucs was a lot of offensive penalties, a lot of penalties that cost us scoring drives, and a lot of bad calls. We can sum this up to a lot of bad calls and very, very piss-poor performance from the pass rush. The front four, Evan sent me his notes before the show, and he hit the nail right on the head. That front four, that pass rush could not stop a nosebleed. It was very bad day from the pass rush. There's really nothing else I can say about that, but injuries plagued us as well. Now, one thing I did want to open up and talk about, because it was one of the first things of the game, something I wanted to touch on and talk about were the bad calls, and the biggest one, something that set the tone for the rest of the game, was the first drive for the Minnesota Vikings. Dalvin Cook's 1-yard touchdown was not a touchdown. It was a fumble, and the Buccaneers had possession of it at their own 1-yard line, if not maybe a touchback. But the Buccaneers had possession of it after the review. The announcers on Fox said it. The announcers on the radio said it. And the network and officials did not think to look twice to review that play after they scored it as a touchdown because it was very much a fumble. That brought the score to 7-3 and really set the tone for the first half as Case Keenum threw like Joe Montana, which is ridiculous. The Buccaneers need to find a way to stop Case Keenum, a backup caliber quarterback. Very piss-poor performance from the front four pass rush. That's what allowed Case Keenum to really go in there and throw the ball however he wanted to all day. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Let me get my hat on. Let me get my thinking cap on, and we'll jump right into this. If you guys are still joining the stream, make sure you say something in the live chat. Leave a thumbs up. Let me know that you're here. And we'll get rolling here. And make sure all my stuff is on. We are ready to go. Let's break this game down. Now, bad calls are really what plagued us in this game. But before we jump into bad calls, let's talk about all the players we had sitting out coming into the game and everyone who did get hurt. Now, Quan Alexander went down against Chicago with a hamstring. Quan Alexander went down with a hamstring injury against Chicago and actually came out a few days later and said everything looks fine on his end. He's going to be able to play Sunday. Sunday rolls around. He is ruled out for the contest against Minnesota, which proved very, very, very unfortunate and proved very – the Bucs were dependent on Quan Alexander. I'll put it that way. I can't find a pretty way to put it. I can't say anything too positive about that. The Bucs needed Quan Alexander as he is one of our best defensive players. And a really, really somewhat slow day for the linebacker core. But let's talk about these injuries. Quan Alexander was out with a hamstring injury. As of right now, he looks questionable for next week. Hoping to see him back next week in Tampa as we take on the Giants. Chris Baker was out due to illness. Lavonte David did go down later in the game with an ankle injury, and he looks doubtful for next week. We'll jump into that after this. Brent Grimes was out with a shoulder injury. A lot of people also related it to illness, so he did not play Sunday. Jarquez Smith was out with illness. Gerald McCoy did go down with an ankle injury at the end of the game. Noah Spence with that dislocated shoulder once again towards the end of the game. TJ Ward went down with a hip injury, and Doug Martin, as we know, serving his suspension at this time. So, a very long day. Excuse me. A very long day for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as injuries just tore this team apart, and the Minnesota offense throwing the way they did and using things the way they did, using their weapons. Stephon Diggs coming up big against Vernon Hargreaves was not a very good matchup at all for Vernon Hargreaves. Really hurt us. The injury list was long. A lot of guys weren't coming up. A lot of guys weren't playing this week. Kendall Beckwith had a solid performance, and something I did want to touch on really quick. Not a bad day. If you look at the grand scheme of things, not a bad day for the Bucs. Run defense really did an okay job of stopping Dalvin Cook on the ground. He did not run for more than 100 yards. I believe they held him to about 85, 86, and his longest rush of the day was a 26-yard run, and all that got him was a first down. Now let's jump into this game and break it down stat by stat. Let me just get everything pulled up here. I'm doing things by myself, as I mentioned before, so it's going to be a little bit of a rougher pace, but we'll get things going here. As you guys know, the final out of Minnesota, 34-17. The Buccaneers fall 1-1. The Vikings improve to 2-1. And looking at it in the long term, the Bucs really can't afford to let this linger. They can't afford to let this loss affect the rest of the season. And a lot of fans even coming out and saying, oh, the season's over, everyone's injured, Jameis needs to be traded, this and that. That's not the case whatsoever. It's the second game of the season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There are 14 games left on the year. This is not going to hurt us. It's going to set the tone and show us the competition that we have and how to prepare. Lavonte David going down is something that we need to worry about more than this loss here. Right after cutting Minnesota's lead to 2 touchdowns, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers forced the Vikings into their only 3-and-out of the game. Again, stopping that Minnesota offense was really, really tough for the Bucs all game long. Could not slow down Case Keenum. And it's something about that guy, something everyone talked about and kind of joked about coming into this game, was Case Keenum. The Bucs cannot stop this guy. And that can come back to, as we talked about before, one of the key points, the bad pass rush. Keenum had all the time in the world to roll out on several plays, and he took advantage of that, making a lot of big plays and a lot of big places, connecting with Stephon Diggs for big gains, big first downs, and Dalvin Cook really kicked the crap out of us on the short pass. Dalvin Cook wasn't somebody who built up a lot of momentum on Sunday on the ground. The Bucs did an okay job. If you look at things in the grand scheme of things, we shut him down the best that we could. We held him to less than 100 yards, and I believe it was only 1 touchdown on the board. We'll look into that in just a minute. Case Keenum looked like Joe Montana, and the Buccaneers have to find a way to do that, because if we cannot rush the edge against the Giants in a week, which is what we have to focus on right now, the Bucs defensive line is in a lot of trouble. Hopefully Chris Baker will be back by then. Jarquez Smith still looks questionable. Noah Spence still looks questionable. The shoulder injury for both of those guys. But if we can't get some pressure on the edge against the Giants, then it is safe to say that this Bucs D-line is in a lot of trouble. But looking back at the game, Andrew Sendejo picked it off and returned it 36 yards to the Buccaneers' 35, setting up a field goal that gave the Vikings a 3-score lead. At this point, the momentum was gone, and Mike Evans was actually very upset. A lot of emotion from Mike Evans on that day, and something good to see. Something good to see is your team leader, your lead scorer, rallying people together and trying to get something that can happen. There were a lot of times the Buccaneers were very much still in that football game, and bad calls and simply just, I wouldn't say carelessness or mistakes, but Jameis Winston, had Jameis not thrown those 2 picks, the Buccaneers very well could have taken this game by a hair. But still a lot of troubles remain. The star wide receiver stomped around on the sideline before kicking a water bottle and shoving over a towel cart. After a commanding victory over the Bears in Chicago to start their season, the Buccaneers took several steps backward in a 34-17 defeat on Sunday by the Vikings. The frustration was very evident by everyone on the team. Evans, who was shadowed by Pro Bowl cornerback Xavier Rhodes, had a quiet 7 catches for 67 yards. Deshaun Jackson, the intended target on the pass Sendejo interception, had 4 receptions for 84 yards and 1 touchdown, and Evan had come out and said on the previous episode of the podcast that Deshaun Jackson was going to shine this game and come up big and get his first touchdown as a Buck, which he did. So, Evan, right on you for that one. Deshaun Jackson, the intended target on the pass for the intercepted, had 84 yards and 1 touchdown, but the Buccaneers were playing from behind from the start. On the day, Jameis Winston went 28 for 40 for 328 yards, but he was picked off 3 times, twice in the end zone. Now, the Buccaneers, with injuries to several key players on defense, play twice in the next 11 days, with the New York Giants and the New England Patriots visiting both at home. Evans and Jackson were in the spotlight all afternoon after they took a knee with their hand on their heart during the Star-Spangled Banner to join the rebuke of President Donald Trump's recent obscene remarks about players protesting social justice by kneeling during the national anthem. Now, let's get past this part really here, because I'm not here to talk about Evans and Deshaun Jackson, their criticism on the president. As I've learned over the years, having an opinion on a platform like this, 9 times out of 10, that opinion is going to be wrong and you're going to get on somebody's bad side. So we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the points made against Minnesota and some apparent issues that this team has after going against Minnesota. Now, I've got Evans' notes here, and we'll break them down one by one. Here we are. As Evan said, the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed, no pass rush at all, and he was correct. Case Keenum, as I mentioned before, looked like a Pro Bowl quarterback out there. He was right for his prediction for offensive MVP, which was Deshaun Jackson. And Jameis does need to be better in certain situations. Jameis came out in Chicago and looked a little composed. He looked fairly composed, something it looked like he had been working on in the offseason. Now, it's also hard to work in that situation when you don't practice tackling, and that sucks all around because our team doesn't practice tackling, something that might need to change here in the season. But with a lot of guys going down, a lot of guys apparently being made out of glass, it's going to be hard to get the momentum going. But Jameis does need to step up and just stay composed. That's really what it is. Looking at the interceptions, the 2 that he overthrew Deshaun Jackson on that big 35-yard return by Andrew Sendejo, and the pass in the end zone, that was interception. I believe Adam Humphries was the target. He tried to get the Humphries on the quick slant, overthrew the slant, and the pick was made. That's what it comes down to, is overthrowing those footballs. And it's hard to stay composed in a situation like that. As I said before, the Buccaneers do not practice tackling, and that's going to be a little rough. That can come back and bite us, especially in situations like this. But Jameis does need to work on that decision-making when it comes to those decisions. When it comes to those situations, excuse me. But just a rough day overall for the Bucs, and we'll jump into it in just a little bit. If you guys are in the live chat, let me know that you're here and say something in the chat so I know that you're here, and we'll make sure we can bounce back off of each other, because I'm running it by myself today, and I'm doing the best I can right now. If you guys don't like it, that's all right. You don't have to check it out, but if you do, I appreciate it very, very much. Evan is out sick today. He was not feeling well. He was feeling under the weather before we started to stream, so hopefully he's feeling a little bit better 2 days from now when we can start to record for our next episode, which will be on iTunes if you haven't checked it out already. Let's take a look here. Trying to bring up some more points about the Minnesota Vikings and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Something we can bounce back and forth off of. Bucs need to win next week. Yes. Yes. The Buccaneers need to win next week against the Giants, an 0-3 team coming in here with not a lot of momentum at all, one of the worst offensive lines in the game, and dead last in the running game. It should be an easy game. Now, I say that with a little bit of a little bit of nervousness because it should be an easy game. But then again, any given Sunday, the Bears just beat the Steelers by 6 points in overtime. So any given Sunday, a team can come out and show everybody a team that hasn't been seen before. So the Giants 0-3 going to be coming into Tampa. The Giants are a bad team this year, but I will be honest and say that I don't think the Giants are a bad enough team to start the season 0-4, and it will be a little bit of a challenge for the Bucs. Don't expect anything. Don't expect the Chicago game. I would not expect 35-0, 35-7. I would expect maybe a 10-point game at the end of the day. When it's all said and done, the Bucs take it maybe 28-17. But really, just have to prepare for the Giants. Have to look forward and look at where mistakes were made on Sunday. The cornerbacks, hopefully Brent Grimes can come back into the game because that did come up big. Brent Grimes, had he been matched with Adam Thielen or even Stephon Diggs, would have made for a much different game. Stephon Diggs put up 29 fantasy points, and that's because he ran all over Vernon Hargreaves day in and day out. He was in his face the whole game. And something that we do need to see from the defense, as we said before, was the pass rush. And we're going to get Evan on here in just a second here. Let me see if I can't get him on here. Got to do some clicking around here. Sorry about that. So we got to get him on through Twitter here. Really going to help me. Carrying this by myself isn't ideal, but you got to do what you got to do here. Let's pick things back up as Evan gets prepared to join. If you guys are just now joining us, make sure you leave a thumbs up and let us know you're here in the live chat. Let me get my headphones all set up for Evan coming in here, and we'll pick up right where we left off with this game and hopefully be able to move forward a little bit better than we have. There he is.
Hey.
Hey, man, you feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit better now. So decided I was watching the stream. I decided to hop on.
Nah, I feel you, man. I'm glad you did because it's a little bit hard to jump from topic to topic by myself because I kind of find myself rambling and then I'm not sure if I discussed it enough. So let's jump right into it. We're still kind of touching on the big topics of the day. Nothing too crazy. Didn't get into too much detail. The only thing we really jumped into detail on were Jameis's 2 picks, but nothing super big yet. So we can start over if you like. I mean, I'll toss it over to you and we'll talk your thoughts and then we'll just break it down and get things going here because I kind of just touched the surface and I did want to touch a little bit more on the injuries. So if you want to take it over for a minute or two, you are more than welcome, my man. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely a letdown for the Bucs. That's for sure. As I sent you in my notes, the defense is for some reason cannot stop Case Keenum. No matter what team they put out there, it doesn't seem to matter. It's just every team has that one quarterback or maybe one player that they just cannot stop. For a little bit there, it was for the Bucs. It was Drew Brees, probably about 3-4 years, and now they're having a little bit more success against Brees. But now it's Case Keenum. Man. Big time difference between Drew Brees and Case Keenum. And part of that was because I wrote in the notes, no pass rush at all. It doesn't help when your pure pass rusher, Noah Spence, actually ends up going out, getting injured and has to come out. So that really hurt. Thought Jerome McCoy played well, but there's just not enough rushers around him to make up for it. Robert Ayers is not an edge rusher. Will Golson is not an edge rusher. Yeah, they can get sacks every now and then, but
they're not going to take over a game, and that was extremely disappointing. Also, Ryan Smith, Vern Hargraves were disappointing. Probably the best player of the day was Nick Folk, who made all his kicks. Besides Deshaun Jackson, the Bucs have pretty much solved their kicking problems. That's pretty much it for the thoughts on the defense. It needs to be better. Yes, it did hurt that they were losing them guys. Didn't have key players in key spots, especially Quan Alexander. You can tell he's definitely the heart of the defense, and they need him in order to succeed. And I saw a stat today that said the Bucs haven't won a game that Quan Alexander hasn't played in. They don't win without Quan Alexander. And then of course Vern Hargraves coming out a couple times, twice actually came out. Ryan Smith came out. T.J. Ward was questionable return. Just a pretty bad storm of all things. Offensively, couldn't run the ball for nothing. Quiz Rogers couldn't get nothing going. Deshaun Jackson, Mike Evans had a good game. So it was, okay. Not his best, not his worst. I've seen Jameis worse. He has to know when too much is. And right now, he's getting better at that, but not yet. And eventually he will. But let's hope that it's sooner rather than later, because the Bucs need this offense to score points. I mean, they've invested a lot of draft picks in offense, and they've invested a lot of money in the offensive side of the ball, and right now it's not producing as Jason Cutter would like it to. So they definitely need something to go right there. And I think eventually they will right the ship, and then everything will be okay, but it might take a little bit more time. I keep saying the word chemistry. I think chemistry is huge, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, they got to get healthy. That's the biggest thing for the defense. Brent Grimes, Swaggy Baker, Quiz Smith, Levante David, especially Quan Alexander, they all need to be healthy. Grimes back in the worst way for this game versus the Giants. I do not want to know what Sterling Shepard, Brandon Marshall, and Odell Beckham Jr. will do to the Bucs secondary if they had trouble stopping Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. So that's not a good spot to be in. So they need Grimes back. Baker will probably be back, considering he was only sick. Jaquiz Smith, I think he'll actually be making his Bucs debut, since the only thing that held him out this week was him being sick. So both of them guys, I think, are going to be back, and that'll boost the D-line. Also think Grimes should be back. The only thing that worries me, I don't think Levante is not going to play, but the only thing that worries me is Quan, because hamstring injuries are tough. They could be a week, could be 4 weeks. You never really know. It's probably the max is probably about 5 games, but
it's 5 games too many at this point.
Yeah, and you can tell that the defense has a different feel to it when Quan's not out there, both when you're watching it and when the players are playing out there. I'm sure. I mean, not many players are going to admit it. Certainly different when Kendall Beckwith is calling the plays for the defense rather than Quan Alexander. That's just a fact. It's not, and I think even some players would say that, but obviously they haven't been asked that. But Quan Alexander, the games that he's out really shows how good he really is. Vernon Hargreaves needs to be better. All defense needs to be better, but the pass rush and the Giants' offensive line is the worst offensive line in football. They have to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, if there's no rush on the edge, if there's no pressure in the first 2 quarters, then we really got a problem.
And that would be, I thought the 2 things, if I had to pick one thing on each side of the ball that would lead to the Bucs missing the playoffs this year. On offense, I was going to say the run game, which has been completely ineffective, especially this game. And on defense, the pass rush, which has been completely ineffective. The Buccaneers have had 1 sack in 8 quarters. That's unacceptable. I'm not. We all knew the pass rush wasn't great, but it's got to be better than 1 sack. That's for sure.
Especially in the offseason, if you do what you can to acquire big talent like Chris Baker. Chris Baker and Gerald McCoy should be enough if these guys come out at 100%. I'm not coming down on them. Injuries do happen. Chris Baker was out sick. Gerald McCoy did get worn out very, very quickly, something we brought up. The Minnesota offense really just wore this defense out, and that could be the cause of a couple of these injuries, a lot of recurring injuries for these guys. The shoulder for Noah Spence, Jaquiz Smith, both of those guys going down off of previous injuries. We did see Gerald McCoy limp off the field against Chicago with that ankle, something that he had to go down with again. But you have this much star power, even guys like Will Golston and Robert Ayers on the end. Those are big enough guys to get in there and make plays, and really, really concerning. The Vikings have a pretty okay offensive line, I'd say middle of the board, but going up against the Giants, like you said, it should be unexcusable if there's not more than one sack. Well, if there's not at least one sack in the first half of this game.
The only thing that will be a little bit that will get general fans, casual fans mad is that if they don't get a sack, it's partly because of – I watched a lot of that Giants game. Giants versus Eagles, of course, I live near Philly, so I watched a lot of the Eagles and stuff when the Bucs weren't on, or after the Vikings scored a touchdown, I get angry, turn it off for a little bit, and he was getting the ball out so quick. And you could tell that was the game plan on offense. So it's going to be a lot of short passes. Eli is not going to hold the ball long, and that mirrors on the Buccaneers not getting a sack. And that's not, there's only so much the Buccaneers can do when the guy's getting the ball out in 1 second.
Yeah,
you're not going to get there in 1 second. So it's up to the cornerbacks too to make plays, and that's why I think Brett Grimes needs to come back this week, because he'll be matched up on Odell, Hargreaves on Marshall, and Bobby Mack in the slot versus Sterling Shepard, who Sterling Shepard absolutely torched the Eagles secondary last week. Even though I think the Bucs secondary is better than the Eagles secondary, they still have to be ready.
And something we've talked about, something we touched on both games thus far, is the short pass and learning how to defend the short pass. Dalvin Cook, I mentioned before, not a bad day by the Bucs stopping Dalvin Cook. He did not run for over 100 yards. His longest run was, I believe, 24 or 26 yards. Really didn't put him up that big on the run game for Minnesota. Stopping the short pass, Dalvin Cook ate us alive on the short pass. You and I had talked about that a little bit at halftime. And the short pass is what Case Keenum beat us on for most of the day, as well as Stephon Diggs coming up big in certain places down the field. And that comes into Vernon Hargreaves, as you said, does need to be a little bit better in those situations. But stopping the short pass is something that is going to make or break how this defense looks. As you said, Eli Manning, if we can get the pressure, he's not going to be holding the ball for very long. He gets it out in 1 or 2 seconds. You're going to have to make sure your guys are matched up where they need to be. And if they can make a play at least once on the short ball, will be a good day for the Bucs defense. But at this point, it's all about just moving on and looking forward, and that is New York. Got to get back in the New York groove. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm back. Back in the New York groove. That's a good song.
And, they have to win this game versus the Giants. And the sad part is the Giants are looking at this as they have to win this game versus the Bucs. They're 0-3. You could say the Bucs need this game more. I mean, the Giants need this game more than the Bucs do. Bucs are 1-1. Giants are 0-3. It's a big difference. So the Giants need this game more than the Bucs do, but in the Bucs' perspectives of if they want to make the playoffs, this is the game the Bucs have to win. Facing New England, a couple days afterwards, that's going to be a loss. It'll be close, but that's a loss. New England's just too good.
Got to try and keep spirits high, but I'm with you, man. It's going to be a tough game coming up against the Super Bowl champions on a short week. Still looking ahead, no bye week at all. That's going to bite us. A lot of injuries thus far this season. And something that you had mentioned coming up, a lot of these guys, a lot of the guys who were out on Sunday should be healthy against the Giants. A lot of these guys hopefully looking to come back. And as we mentioned before, I'll say it again, they should be healthy Sunday, at least about half of them, if not maybe a little less. But couple of key players going to come back and hopefully do some work for the Bucs defense against New York in Tampa, and then just move right on and get ready to tear up New England on a Thursday night. We have not won in the Color Rush uniforms yet, so it's just it's a rough situation. But back to what you were saying. I apologize. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I just look at this as, let's say, I think, if you're being realistic here, do you really have the Bucs beating the Patriots?
From a realistic standpoint, no, I do not. I don't have the Bucs beating a couple of guys this season. Like we talked about on season predictions, the Bucs aren't going to beat Green Bay and Lambeau. I mean, any given Sunday we could see something happen, but as of right now, no, I don't have the Bucs beating a lot of people right now.
Yeah, and it's if they lose versus the Giants, and you go and face the Patriots, and you lose that game, and now all of a sudden you're 1-3. And yes, you were 1-3 last year, but you were also much healthier last year, and you still had a bye week. They were 1-3 after the Denver Broncos loss, and they beat the Panthers, Roberto Aguayo's game winner, and then they went on the bye week. Well, now you don't have a bye week, so it's important to beat the Giants here, because after the Patriots, I think you have 3 wins right in a row. I think you beat the Cardinals, I think you beat the Bills, and I think you beat the Panthers. So if you can come out of these 2 games 1-1, and end this 4-game stretch 2-2, I think you'll be in an all right spot. But if you don't, then if you don't beat the Giants, then that means you're gonna have to win some tough games down the stretch. New Orleans in New Orleans, Atlanta in Atlanta, even maybe Green Bay in Green Bay. You're gonna have to win some of those games, and that would be very difficult. So just to make life easier for them, they're gonna need to take advantage of a low confidence but desperate Giants team.
Now, we touched on the defense, we touched on the offense, we touched on injury, something that I wanted to talk about because I wanted to hear someone else's opinion on it. The referees and the official calls on the day were absolutely terrible. Were laughable at that. A lot of missed calls, and simply that's what they came back as. Dirk Cutter called out the officials multiple times, and there was even a quoted thing I had saw that our boy Trevor had shared it on Twitter. Dirk Cutter had called someone out, I believe it was for pass interference, and the referee just looked at him and said, "Oh, we missed the call." So a very piss-poor performance from the officials, and something that really set the tone from the first drive of the game. Dalvin Cook's goal line touchdown.
It's a fumble.
That was a fumble. 100% it was a fumble. Everyone who saw it said it was a fumble. Minnesota fans said it was a fumble. But the network officials, people at that game, the officials did not think twice to review that more than they should have, and that really set the tone for the first half. Had the Bucs come out 3-0 and been able to pick up on that second drive, really would have set the tone and really would have allowed the Bucs to establish a little bit different momentum, knowing that they didn't have the pressure of being a score behind. A lot of missed pass interference calls, a lot of missed holding calls, and just a lot of bad calls altogether that really kept the Buccaneers out of this contest, at least more than they already were. A lot of mistakes kept the Bucs out of this game, but bad calls has to be number one, at least for me.
Yeah, I believe Cutter was angry at it was a targeting penalty. That break caught in the end zone. The guy clearly went for his head. Should have been called. Should have been 15 yards. And the kickoff return, which would have set the Vikings back even farther. Maybe the Bucs get a turnover. Maybe they stop and get a short field and score again. Who knows? The other one was a targeting call on Mike Evans late in the game. Jameis Winston forced the ball in there. Got hit right in the head. Looked like a targeting call. Ball pops up. Gets picked off, and that did it. I was with probably about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter or so. They were down 31-17, I believe, and that was it. So that should have been a call as well. Automatic interception doesn't count. Automatic first down, 15 yards. Wasn't. Game's done. The refs, they apologized, made their decision. Just got to move on. And I think that's the message from Cutter to the team. So you got to move on. So this is a huge game here. It's in Tampa versus the Giants, Raymond James Stadium. You're riding a 5-game home win streak. You need to win this game. So it's not only important for the players, it's important for the fans. The fans are talking about taking back Ray J and everything. Well, I mean, the best way to take back Ray J is to win at Ray J. And obviously the Buccaneers need to win on the road too, or else they'll be 8-8, and that's not getting you into playoffs. So they need to be better on the road. But it starts with getting a win here, and maybe picking up some momentum to maybe knock off the Patriots. But it's gonna be difficult for both games because the Giants are still probably one of the best 0-3 teams I've ever seen.
Exactly. A lot of people came out and straight up said the Giants are a bad team this year. And that could be argued, but I mentioned before, I don't think the Giants are bad enough to come out and start 0-4. So this will be a challenge for the Bucs. Really coming up against a football team that's just pissed off at this point. I'm sure the Giants want to win this game more than anyone in the NFL wants to win Sunday. You can't come out and start 0-3 coming in on the road against a team that just lost in Minnesota on the road. The Giants are going to be hungry for a win, and it's something that the Bucs have to be prepared for. It's something that all comes into preparation. You have these guys coming off of the injured list, hopefully going to be coming back and being healthy in this game and looking to bounce back off of an injury. And that's exactly what we need, but don't overlook this Giants team because they have beat us in the past. And as you mentioned before, you saw what Adam Thielen and a couple of other guys did against the Buccaneers secondary. You can only imagine what a receiving core of OBJ, Brandon Marshall, and others can do against this secondary. But it will be at home for the Buccaneers, so that can be an advantage here. But regardless, just need to prepare.
Yeah, and, I just looked up some stats here. Bucs have faced Eli Manning 5 times, including one playoff game. Manning is 5-0 against the Buccaneers. And he won the playoff game that was in Raymond James Stadium, has beaten the Bucs 3 times at Raymond James Stadium. The Giants have beaten 3 times, and Giants have beaten the Bucs 2 times in MetLife with Eli Manning. So last one was a 32-18 win for the Giants. Evans' drop game where he just seemingly dropped every ball in sight. I was at that game. So let's hope that on Monday morning or even Sunday night, let's hope that Eli Manning is now 5-1 against the Buccaneers all time, including the playoffs. So.
And you are right on that, man. It's very important. Let's hope the Bucs can prepare this week and come back for something that can, as you mentioned, the fans talking about taking back Ray J, something that can excite the fans. We had the discussion, a little short discussion, a lot of fake fans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Derek Fournier said it at the Hall of Fame tailgate, and it's a quote that I really liked. He said, it's very easy to support a winner. It's very easy to support a winning team like the New England Patriots or any team that makes the Super Bowl. But to stand by the Bucs, a lot of these fans who are already saying the season is over are the same fans who quit on the team when we were 1-3 last year and then came back when we were 8-5. So going to be a rough situation for the Bucs if they can't get things going. But again, there's still plenty of football left to be played this season, and we just need to move on from Minnesota. That's it, bar none. Need to recover from injuries, need to get healthy and get ready for these games that we have, because it is going to be a tough stretch for about 2 weeks. But then you said a couple of good, easier opponents after the Patriots on Thursday night. But we have just about touched on everything in Minnesota, unless there are any closing points you have. I think we could just about wrap things up here. What are you thinking right now?
Not really much. I pretty much got everything. Bucs need to be better. Need to be better on defense. Need to be better on offense. And I think the most important thing is they need to be healthy.
All right. Looking to be healthy is what's going to help us out against New York. Regardless, should be a good game this Sunday. It's a 4 o'clock game, not a 1 o'clock game. So if it catches you off guard, the game will be on. Don't you guys worry. And Raymond James should be a good one coming for week 4. episode. The Cannon should be we're going to record probably about 2 days. And I hope you're off of the injured list in 2 days. Right. I wanted to touch on something that we are also going to touch on the podcast. Watching in fantasy this week, I just wanted to bring that up before we went off the air. But if you guys are watching, thank you so much. If you haven't already, make sure you leave a thumbs up and iTunes. Thank you guys so much for the support. Remember that Atlanta led by 25. Go Bucs and have a good rest of your week. We'll see you in a few days. Still talking. Hold on here. Let me take a look here. When we use Google Hangouts, guys, these technical difficulties are quite the show when they do happen, because that was a killer outro. I thought it was good. But no, we're still rolling, actually. So let me fail to stop broadcast. All right, we're still live, guys.